Good evening, judges. We are Trifecta. My name is Megan Ann Wilson, and I'm the brand designer.
I'm Gabe Gonzalez, the footwear designer.
And I'm Lawrence Bass, the colors and materials designer.
And our concept is called Jackpot James. So it's sometimes said that without taking a risk, you can't really get a big reward. Now, Dwayne, you had to take a big risk when you started Pencil. Adidas had to take a big risk when they took those little TPU balls and turned it into Boost. And Andrew, David, Swoozy, you know about those YouTube comments. Now, when we started really getting into James Harden, we started looking at a trend. It was kind of all revolved around risk and then number 13. Now, when James was born, his mom called him Lucky. And then from then on, he went and picked number 13 instead of 45 when he was at Artesia High School. And that kind of started a chain of James creating his own luck. So we saw that when he chose to leave Oklahoma City by not renewing his contract. We saw that when he chose to sign with Adidas for a 13-year deal. And from then on, we kind of got our James Harden on. I don't know if you know, but he loves math. He has a really high basketball IQ. So we started thinking like James and got really into the numerology of the number 13. And in 13, in Italy, that's when you hit the jackpot. So that kind of started us going. So we looked at a jackpot code. So some major numbers that stood out to us was the number 12. That's when James Harden won his first Olympic gold medal. It's also his mom's birthday and the year when he debuted with Houston. Of course, number 13, what he wears, it's the 6 prime number, and he won 6th Man of the Year award, his Adidas deal, among so much more. And then the number 3, the 3rd pick overall in the entry draft. Also, when you look at young hoopers, out of 10,000 in high school, only 1.3% actually make it into the NBA. And James, he's never had a plan B. He's always had a plan A. He always takes that risk on himself. So that's why we saw him as Jackpot James. We see him as a risk taker in fashion, on the court, from switching from the 2-guard spot to the 1-guard. We see him as that left arm bandit, not just on the court, but on 2K, where he's very competitive and his other side comes out. And of course, we see him as unnormal. It's a way he's used to describe his game that's fast but slow, finesse but powerful. And that really inspired us when we were creating our design. And so Gabe, our footwear designer, is going to talk about it.
Thank you, Megan. So James might not be the fastest guard in the league, but he really understands that the game of basketball is about dynamic changes of pace and direction. So with that performance aspect in mind, we wanted to create a shoe that addresses these things. So we wanted to improve the lacing and the fit. We wanted to increase lateral support. And we wanted to stabilize the Achilles and heel lockdown. For inspiration, we're back to this risk aspect. When I think about taking risks, I think of jumping out of a plane not knowing that your parachute's going to open. That leap of faith that James Harden kind of took at a very young age, where he had that plan A the whole time and wanted to be a superstar. We addressed that into our lacing system here. Next thing we took inspiration from is motion. The idea of light passing through, thinking about traffic, in a long exposure shutter camera. You kind of see it, but you kind of don't. And so we addressed that with a small detail in the toe cap that addresses James Harden's quick pace, his motion, and it kind of draws your eyes to the other side of the shoe. And finally, the idea of a casino not being an arena for gambling, but more so an entertainment facility. So we looked at the New York casino roller coaster, and kind of represents James Harden's not only being a basketball player, but an entertainer all around. So for exploration in our process, we wanted to create something that worked together to kind of form fit the foot. So what we started with was this weave pattern. The idea was to kind of use the weave as part of the lacing system, so that once you tie it, the whole structure works together to kind of form fit your foot. We noticed that the structure itself was not as stable as something that was more solid, so we tried to simplify. We experimented with a more internal structure, but we thought that we could do the same thing with even less materials, and it being ready for market, we wanted to simplify as much as possible. So what we ended up with was just the 3 eyelets that extend to the bottom of the stroller board to kind of form fit your foot and also achieve that heel lockdown. The buildup of our shoe here, we started with our outsole that was provided. The outsole was made according to James Harden's game himself, shank plate and the bounce material for high response rate. We added that overlay of the toe cap that we have exaggerated and actually extends on the lateral side of the foot for more lateral stability. And also creates that contrast with the different materials as a kind of an ode to his paradoxical contrasting nature of his games. He's fast, he's slow, but he's effective. The lining houses the Achilles cushioning in the heel for extra lockdown and stability. And we use tonal branding because we know that James wants his shoe to be recognized not because his brand's on it, but because of the design and something that the consumer can recognize as his own. And lastly, the lace loops, once again, to further create that stability and heel lockdown. So I'll give it to Lawrence to talk about colors and materials.
So when you think of a jackpot, you think of taking a risk, you think of winning, and then you think of that excitement surrounded around all of that. So when I think of James Harden, he takes a risk every day on the court. He's winning games, and then he has this exciting and fun personality. So we wanted to translate that through color and materials. So we started off with this core black. Him being a black basketball player, black means business, it means body strength as he plows through to get that score. James has described himself as unnormal, and he has a very natural instinct. And we wanted to kind of push that through the core color of red, which we've sprinkled on the lateral side. And that just kind of represents the dichotomy between his game and his personality. Then on the outsole, we have this very subtle silver color, kind of represents how he can sneak up and use his skill to elude his opponents. And then last but not least, we've utilized white in the midsole and white as the toe overlay from the lateral side as a leather piece. And this kind of represents that nod to his seemingly quiet demeanor, but we all know that he's very progressive as far as his style, his game, and his personality. So how we wanted to translate this material-wise, we were thinking about this being a speed product. So basically what we had in mind was something that was cost-efficient, high quality, but at the same time it tells James Harden's story as Jackpot James. So we really wanted to kind of elevate this idea of creating a more simplistic silhouette. So we've only really utilized 3 different materials outside of the midsole and the outsole. So the first layer being this weft knitted mesh. It's very dynamic, very flexible, very breathable. What's important about it though is it has this contrasting view of high and low tones in the knit, and that kind of represents the dual nature of James Harden's personality. Second material we have is that fine, full grain leather toe cap and overlay. It's very durable and stretchy enough for optimal performance, and that kind of brings that luxurious aspect to it so it can appeal to the consumer. And then the very last layer is this dual-faced textile mesh. It actually has a great balance between this black and red color, which kind of, I don't know, it looks very balanced and kind of gives you those 2 sides of James Harden. And then 2 is very comfortable, adds cushioning, and kind of makes the foot breathable. So after these material ways and this jack palette kind of led to this final design, this final render here. And then we wanted to extend that into 2 different colorways. The first being this Shanghai colorway from when he's playing overseas. This is where we decided to take that risk with that yellow, kind of paying homage to the alternate jerseys. And then also to just taking those hints of colors that you would see in like China lamps or like the Chinese New Year. And then we have Brothers Through Everything that's going through on the medial side. Then my favorite, got the Black History Month colorway. Takes inspiration from the Pan-African flag. You know, black representing who we are, red representing that blood, sweat, and tears that we've put forth, and that, that green representing that wealth and that prosperity that, where we come from. Then last but not least, still taking into consideration this being a speed product and creating something that can be mass produced, we wanted to go really simplistic with the box and have a clean Jackpot James branding and a call of action on the edge of the board that says create your luck. But as you get on the inside, there's a little secret surprise, like a scratch off lottery ticket, to where it creates your own jackpot code, which our consumer can interact with our campaign, which Megan is going to talk about more.
Thanks, Lawrence. So before we even talk about marketing, let's talk about the market. So here we're appealing to Generation Z. We're looking at kids probably around 14 to 18. Now, it was great to have our focus group. We actually found out that most of them don't buy their sneakers. So we want to price something that's a little more affordable. And being that it is a team shoe using bounce technology, we want to price around $113. Yes, it ties in our numerology, but also fits in with the current team shoes and the technology and pricing that Adidas is offering. So as Lawrence mentioned as well, Create Your Luck is really our campaign and our kind of call to action for the youth that are going to be going through our product. So we want to engage them with things like the scratch-off ticket, and that's something we notice in the focus group too. They love being able to pull the lever and see something light off. They want that kind of instant gratification. So we decided to go to China as well, because last year the Rockets played overseas for the global games. And Harden mentioned how much he loved playing there. He wants to go back every year. And Adidas has a really strong market share in China. So we want to build on that and start the campaign there before bringing it back home before the regular season begins. And obviously, we wanted to tie in our boxes, changing the colors because it is more simple to go with our colorways of the shoe. So it would be certain jackpot numbers to go to an event in China, while our Black History Month could focus on different foundations that you can donate to with the jackpot code like HBCUs. And then when it came to our ad campaign, we kept thinking about how do you create your luck? And the different elements and that paradox that James has in his game. He has the finesse, he also has that power. So we wanted to bring that through and utilize our POP to really give that story to everyone and also engage our consumer.
What happens when you start taking smart risks like James Harden? Unlucky numbers start feeling like a cheat code. You start controlling the tempo and finessing the floor. And elevating over the competition, that's like this. Create your luck. The Jackpot James coming soon.
So we see this ad campaign as really being the springboard for us to do a social media campaign and branding. So we would launch it, like we talked about, launching it in China first, using making sure it kind of appeals to the Chinese market, then bringing it back home, using Instagram, using Weibo in China to make sure that we are personalizing to that hyper-local experience, something that Adidas does a lot in their brand essence. And of course, we had to think of a Snapchat filter, so you can put on the beard and talk about how you create your luck. Maybe it's putting up a lot of shots. Maybe it's working really hard at school. Maybe you like math just as much as Harden does. So we really want to engage people that way. We also see something like an Instagram live broadcast where Harden or other Adidas athletes can show their risky moves on the court and have people engage that way. So for us, and this would be an element for our Instagram campaign to give you an idea of what we're thinking visually-wise, color-wise, to really tie in our full branding experience together. So for this project, our team really grew throughout the 8 weeks. We learned how to edit, which was very important to us. So we wanted to kind of give our scaled-back version of taking a risk, and we wanted to take a risk on this project because we want to leave it on the floor. You know, this is the last episode, kind of inspired by Harden on that. So thanks so much for your time. We are Trifecta.